We should be live and good to go. All right. We're ready to start the meeting.
Okay. So we don't see who's on until.
Yes, what'll happen is there is the applicant here. I see him in the waiting room on my side as the host. And after I give my staff report, the applicant can speak to the nature of his request.
Okay, so they can hear us.
Yeah, they should be able to hear us. That's correct.
Okay. So I guess once I do my introduction, then I'll ask you to do your staff and then I'll.
Bring him in, bring the applicant. That's correct.
Okay. So here we go. Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Poolesville Board of Zoning Appeals public hearing this October 20th, 2020. Here tonight we have board members, Mr. Ralph Hitchens, Ms. Laura Eckert, and myself, Patricia Wolford. In addition, we have Mr. Jack Gullo, the town attorney, and Mr. Seth Rivard, town manager. With that, we'll call this meeting to order. And tonight we have a public hearing on variance 002-20 submitted by Christopher and Christina Miller at 19918 Brightwell Crossing for a variance to enclose an existing deck which will exceed the maximum lot coverage. This application is made pursuant to the Poolesville Zoning Code, Appendix B, Section 10D3, to authorize a variance from Section 3C Special Development Standards in the PR 1/3 acre zone. The public hearing file contains the following exhibits. 1, an application for variance. 2, the affidavit of posting. 3, Poolesville Planning Commission agenda mailed to owners adjoining and confronting properties. 4, the Board of Zoning Appeals notice of public hearing mailed to owners adjoining and confronting properties. 5, copy of the Frederick News Post with the notice of public hearing dated October 5th and October 12th, 2020. 6, recommendation of the Poolesville Planning Commission dated October 14th, 2020. And 7, copy of the news flash on the town's website. With that, I guess, Seth, I'll go to you to give the staff presentation before we move on to the applicant's presentation.
Certainly, as the chairwoman had pointed out, the transcripts are included in your packet if you've had an opportunity to see that. This is now a recommendation from the Planning Commission, and I can present to you what they provided to you through the staff report I originated to them. So if you look at page 1 of sort of the staff report that looks like this, you can see this here. What you'll see is the applicant has sort of a dog-legged type deck, and they're looking to cover the 24 by 14 area of this deck. As you may be aware, impervious area is counted by the roof coverage here in Poolesville, and that's what determines, I should say, maximum lot coverage. The maximum lot coverage is determined by roof area, not impervious area. And so the applicant would exceed the maximum lot coverage area once this is roofed as sort of a 3-season porch. The details of the lot itself can be found on page 3 of the staff report where it says lot coverage. There's some bullet points associated with it. So currently the existing lot coverage is about 2,848 square feet, or nearly 19.5% of the lot. The maximum lot coverage in this district is 20%, so you can see they're very close. The proposed roof over the deck is 288 square feet. That would put them at 3136 or 21.4% of maximum lot coverage, or 21.4% lot coverage, which exceeds clearly the 20% by 1.4%. So that's the variance they're looking for, is to exceed the maximum lot coverage by 21.4, or in terms of square footage, it's 211 square feet above and beyond what they could have. So there are essentially 4 criteria that an applicant has to meet to be granted a variance. I will go through those The first one is the criteria they have to meet will not adversely affect the public health, safety, welfare, or the rights of adjacent property owners. In this case, they will not be affecting the adjacent property owners or the rights or welfare. The deck itself exists. There'll be no new encroachments or additions to the property that exceed where structures are today. B, arises from a special condition or attributes which pertain to the property for the variance, which is salt and were not created by the person seeking the variance. So one of the big things at the time that this lot was platted, the maximum lot coverage was pretty much known from day one with the house footprint. Even a modest and reasonable accessory structure that somebody might like to put on their property would require a variance in essence. So any sort of lot coverage above and beyond what was originally created would have probably ultimately required a variance in some fashion. So again, while not a one-to-one transfer, instead of having, let's say, an accessory structure, they're now just having this covered roof. C, would eliminate an unnecessary hardship and permit reasonable use of land. The applicant is seeking modest relief from the maximum lot coverage. It's fairly de minimis and would allow reasonable use of land. Fourth and finally, will allow the intent of the zoning ordinance to be observed and substantial justice done. Again, you've all been on the board a while. The intent of the zoning ordinance really is to provide safety, light, air. We don't overbuild lots. Nobody's excessively encroaching. We don't create any sort of fire hazards by being too close to property owner with excessive size structures and things of that nature. So in that regard, the intent of the zoning ordinance is met. The modest relief that the applicant is seeking would provide substantial justice to them to be able to make use of this property. And again, we're talking about 211 square feet in this case that they really need to exceed the lot coverage by in terms of when it ranks out to the ratio of the percentage of the lot. As such, the Planning Commission recommended to you that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve this variance request pretty much based on the staff report that you find here before you. And that is the recommendation from the Planning Commission to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I have nothing else to add here. If you have any questions of me, I can take those.
Ralph, do you have any questions? You're muted. Okay.
I don't have any questions. The packet was pretty clear. It's
Seth,
just
I've
putting
got
a roof over an existing structure, so.
Yes, Laura.
Seth, are there other areas where lots are close to the 20%, such as this lot?
I did not do an analysis of the existing lots that surround this location, the existing homes that probably directly adjacent to it.
One of the things I struggle with is it seems developers want to build to the maximum amount they can on a lot, and then they turn it, right? Somebody buys the lot and they don't know, and it seems reasonable to want a roof or to want an accessory building. And then that puts the town in an awkward position because you've got to cut off your lot size or your roof cut, whatever your this building size at some point. But I struggle a little bit with how this lot is special in a way versus how there are a lot of other lots where we could come up with the same end result.
Mm-hmm. One of the things the applicant at least put in their application, and if you're familiar with the location, this property does directly abut and is adjacent to Elgin Park. So there is, at least from a visual, not an actual technical standard, that this lot may appear larger because it then transitions into a park that exists versus the backyard, and where you're starting to begin to see this encroachment from both sides of lots. So that was one of the things the applicant put in there as well. And I think from a pure standpoint that you're not inherently incorrect about the nature of this and what happens in terms of the maximum lot area. It's one of those situations where, again, maybe if the developer I don't know how close the developer was to meeting their maximum open space dedication, but if they were well over it, this could have been a case where an additional 5 or 8 feet in lot depth across the 100 feet could have given all these lots a lot of extra area to have greater maximum lot coverage for reasonable things that we're talking about here in this discussion. So it's just one of those things where in hindsight, it would have been better. And I think there would have been no net effect loss for either for the future lot homeowners or the developer in this case. But clearly we can't go back in time and change that. But it's an example how that could have been remedied.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. And we'll still hear from the applicant too, right?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Once
I
you
think
have.
That's all I have for now, Patricia.
And I think just to discuss that further, Laura, because I'm in agreement with you that there gets a point where, unfortunately, this does fall on the homeowner because a developer came in and built to the max. And, I'm a lot of times not in favor of every variance that comes in because it just seems like we just kind of hand them out at times. That's how I see it. But in a case like this, I think the fact that there was this existing deck and was probably built with no intention of ever covering it, but now they're deciding to cover it, and it's kind of like it is the square footage that it is. And they do have this public pathway that's coming through these two lots. Had that not been there, that space would have probably gone into both of these lots. So, that probably would have made up that difference of that 211 square feet, which really on the overall scheme of things isn't much. And I think that can make this lot maybe a little more unique than maybe another lot in this development that's just jammed with real tiny lots going down the street and everybody's maxed out, and to cover a deck is really imposing too much on the neighbors. But in this case, because they do have that little public swath going through, it creates the separation from the neighbor next door and kind of minimalizes this. So I think that can kind of make this lot a little more unique than another where it's not proposing any hardship on anybody because of that.
That's a good distinction, Patricia. Thanks for pointing that out.
Because I think they're all going to back up to park and all that. And we can't just always say, well, you got parkland on the back, so therefore. Because it's also the relationship side to side. And I think this lot just has that uniqueness that, again, I don't think their intent was when they did the deck that we're going to enclose it, but now the deck's there, it's kind of defined the square footage, and it's minimal in some respects. So, and I'm usually the stickler for things. So I guess.
Well, in some ways it seems different to also just cover an existing deck versus putting in an accessory building, right? I mean, I don't know the imperviousness versus the roof coverage, but to me, it's already square footage the way it is right now.
And that's not going to change.
Right. And my only concern here would be that this lot doesn't come in down the road and decides we need a shed in the back, because we're giving it here, but now don't come back and say I need a 10 by 20 shed in the back, and I need, because.
Yeah, I mean, right now you got a 1% on the covered space, but you're not exceeding the overall footprint. And yeah, a shed would exceed the footprint considerably, and that would be a more serious thing. We'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that being said, do we get the applicant on then, Seth?
Yes, I'll bring the applicant into the room. This is Chris. This is the applicant. Chris, can you hear us? I know you're on mute, it looks like.
There you go.
Hi, Chris. You're before the Board of Zoning Appeals. They make the final determination. As you know from the other night, the Planning Commission made the recommendation to this body, and the Board of Zoning Appeals will make this final determination. You were able to hear in and listen in?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I've been listening in on YouTube. Thanks for the great discussion.
Go ahead. The floor is yours.
I just want to state one thing, Chris, that you understand that your testimony here is binding and is goes as part of the record.
Thank you. Yes, I understand.
Okay.
And thank you, Seth, for the presentation. So I think that was a great summary. The only other points I'd add that we didn't quite appreciate when we bought the house and had the deck built was it is southwest facing, so it is blazing hot during the summer. We've had an awning installed, a retractable awning attached to the house, which helps a little bit tolerate in the summer, but it's still kind of fairly unusable in the heat of the summer. And then I guess the second point is Seth had mentioned that we're adjacent to Elgin Park. And one of the things that does is it leaves us rather exposed when we're sitting on the deck. So we're kind of on display to the people at the park. So I think part of the intent with covering that with a screened in porch area would be to get a bit more privacy in addition to protection from the sun.
Is that it?
That's all. Yes, so thank you very much for your consideration.
Ralph, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Laura?
I just have a question for Jay. Jay, I know we need to look at whether this is a hardship and whether there's reasonable use of the land. Right, some might argue that having an existing home there and an existing porch, right, is a reasonable use of the land. How do we justify that covering it or not covering it creates a hardship?
I guess it's going to be up to your discretion, of course. From the facts that have been presented both by the town manager and the applicant, you can have that, you know, the fact is it's existing, and then the fact that it's really unusable due to its location, must face right into the park. So that creates the hardship there, the privacy issue, I would say, that doesn't allow him to use that portion of the land like other people could, because they're not facing a public place where people are invited to come in. So that could be the distinction if you want to make an argument to that. Creates quite the hardship because the town and the community use adjacent property, and he can't utilize his property because of that.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all, Laura?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And I don't have any questions. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Sure, I move we approve.
Or a second?
I'll second. Jay, do we need to put in the rationale, or do you pull that from the record?
I'll pull that from the record and put it in all the opinion.
Yeah, I think it speaks for itself.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, congratulations. Your variance has been approved. Mr. Miller?
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Okay, have a good evening.
Okay, you too. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Okay. Is that it then, guys?
I think so.
That's
That's
all the
it.
business we have.
Okay. Hey, it's good to see you guys. I got actually 2 more Zoom meetings tonight, so I'm going to check out.
Well, don't forget the commissioners.
Yeah, I know. I got the
is on
commissioners
the,
forum too.
Yeah, the commissioners forum is tonight in about
It's-
12 minutes, 11 now.
Oh, geez. I'm going to, yeah, I have to.
It's on
finesse that.
Facebook, so it should be posterity for all times.
Okay.
Oh, boy. All right, gang.
All right,
Take care.
sounds good.
Bye.
Thank you all. Good
Take
night.
care.
Have a good evening.